Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. Some fish are easy to keep, while others can be a bit of a challenge, and if you're new to fish keeping hobby, or you're just wanting some fish that are unlikely to develop a random host of problems in the future, then the hardier fish are likely to be the ones for you. And so though, here are 10 fish for you to consider, and if any of them do take your eye, then more in-depth videos are available on the channel. First of all though, well, what can I say? I love black neon tetras. They are supremely laid back and tolerant fish that are just no harm to anyone else in the tank. In fact, they are the classic community fish. They don't nip fins, they don't get territorial, and they don't chase any other fish around. And so, it's a real shame that they tend to be outshone by their brighter, but much more delicate cousins, the neon tetra. Black tetras are larger, growing to around 1.5 inches in length, and they still need to be kept in a school of around 6 individuals, but they are much more tolerant of changes in water conditions, and in particular they're much more tolerant of increased water hardness or pH, which can really stress out standard neons. This being the case then, as they are less prone to stress, they are also less prone to stress-related diseases such as white spot, which can strike normal neons seemingly overnight. Black neons are also just about as easy to get hold of, and if anything, they tend to be a bit cheaper as well. Next though, we have a very hardy but rather tiny fish. Pygmy Rasboras are members of the teeny tiny Rasboras family, and in that family of tinies, they are in fact still one of the smallest, so smaller and smaller. In fact, this is an adult male, and he is about 1.7 centimeters from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. But while they look supremely delicate, Pygmy Rasboras are in fact a surprisingly hardy species, and once they're established they suffer from very few issues or health challenges. Obviously though, you can't keep them with any much larger species because they are snack-sized, but they do very well with other small fish such as celestial pearl danios, ember tetras, or any of the Corydoras as well. You'll find they get along just fine. Much larger, but just as beautiful, is the Celes rainbow fish. And if I was ever to suggest a perfect starter fish in the rainbow category, this just might be the one. Much like phoenixes, Celebes look exotic and specialist, but they're actually tough as old boots. You'll want to keep both males and females together, because it's when they're displaying that the males really put on their best colour, their best display. And they also look very good as well over a nice dark substrate that darkens up their body and stops them from looking all washed out. They are a little bit larger than many of the other fish on this list. They can get up to 3 inches in length, but in most aquaria they tend to stay more towards the 2.5 inches in length size. They do also need to be kept in a group with at least 6 individuals, with preferably slightly more females than males, because the males can be a little bit harassing, but with plenty of space they are a very entertaining species to watch. Much like the next species on the list. Now, tiger barbs are eternally popular for their, well, tigery looks. But these days they can come with a host of problems, and it can be really challenging in order to find strong stock, no doubt due to inbreeding, and if that's the case in your area, you're struggling to get hold of decent ones, then you might want to look to the 5-banded barb instead. These barbs are in the same family. They grow to about the same size of about 2 inches in the typical aquarium, and they are just as tigery in their appearance. And because they're not quite so popular, they don't seem to have been overbred to the same extent that the tiger barbs have, and so they are much hardier as well. They're also a little bit calmer than tiger barbs, not quite so much dashing about the tank, either looking for food or another fish to mildly annoy. In fact, 5 bands are generally very laid back for barbs, to the point where they can be a tad shy, and they will benefit from having other small ditherfish in the tank with them. Also beware, they can be a little bit nippy when they're youngsters, but they become model citizens as adults, which is actually the opposite way round for tiger barbs, who tend to get nippier as they get older. So, another point in the 5-banded barb's favour. The next fish on the list, however, is always a model citizen. Harlequin Rasboras have been a mainstay in the aquarium hobby for decades. Thanks to their ease of keeping, small size, they only grow to about 1 inch in length, and the lovely pink coloration on the males. Females aren't quite so bright, they have more of a bronzy hue to them, but they're still just as pleasing to look at, and as the males really like to show off their colours to the girls, you'll want to make sure you're keeping both sexes in a group. The group will need to contain at least 6 individuals, but if you give them enough space, they exhibit some really pleasing schooling behaviour, while in smaller tanks they will tend to split up and go about their business individually. Harlequins also aren't the most active of fish, and so they can be kept in a slightly smaller tank, and one of about 60 centimetres will be absolutely perfect for them. Not quite so readily available as Harlequins, but sticking with the theme of very pleasing schooling behaviour, we have the delightful tiny Pygmy Corydoras. These only grow to about 1 inch in length, which is the same as the Harlequin, but because they are so slimline, they feel even smaller than they actually are, and even then, an inch in length is going to be quite a big female. And as true schooling fish, you will very rarely see them separated from each other for very long. They occupy mostly the substrate levels of the tank, and they only occasionally swim up into open water and school there for a little while before they'll return back down to the ground again to snuffle about looking for food. They also have a lovely behaviour where they like to perch on available surfaces, looking for all the world like meerkats on sentry duty. One thing to bear in mind though is that these hardy little catfish are also extremely free breeding, and in densely planted tanks, or one that's got a lot of rocks down at the substrate level, anything like that, you will likely find that their numbers gradually increase because plenty of fry will be able to survive in amongst the roots or down in the crevices between the rocks. So you might start off with just a few catfish, you can quite quickly end up with quite a lot of them. And another fish that can be a tad more challenging to find, but is well worth it if you do come across them, is the Redeye Tetra. These vibrant little tetras are wonderfully hardy and very tolerant of a wide range of different temperatures, which is unusual for tetras. They can even be kept in quite cool water down to about 20 degrees, making them ideal fish for a tank that overlaps between cold and tropical range. They're also very brave, they're pretty much always out in the open, and so long as they have one place where they could potentially go and hide if they needed to, you'll find they pretty much never go out of the light. And they also have the benefit of being very entertaining to watch. Males are rather feisty little guys, and they are constantly flaring and sparring with each other. These fights never amount to any kind of serious damage. They don't even really nip each other's fins when they're fighting. It's all just about posturing and establishing and then re-establishing the pecking order. This can get to be a little bit much for very sensitive fish, so you will want to make sure you're keeping them only with other brave species, but in a tank with other fish that can handle a bit of boisterousness, they are just perfect. And another seemingly bulletproof catfish, Stirb are your classic Corydoras. They are a solid, chunky, substrate-dwelling fish that eats pretty much anything and everything, and Stirb especially stand out because they have the lovely reticulated patterning over the body, and then these really vibrant orange fins that perfectly complement that reticulation. They're also hugely long-lived fish, and they can easily reach 10 years or more in a well-maintained tank. Stirb are a little larger than many of the other commonly available Corydoras, and they will max out to about 3 inches long, and because they're so solid, they look much bigger than they actually are. Bought as either youngsters or as adults though, Stirb, like a lot of the Corys, are very, very hardy, tolerant of a wide range of water conditions, including cool water as well as tropical, and they can withstand wide swings in parameters. And an unusual pointer with Cory catfish as well is the fact that they can survive in waters that are suffering from a temporary decrease in oxygenation because of their ability to swim rapidly up to the surface and then gulp down some air and then return to the substrate. And another tetra to add to the list, and actually the fish that got me thinking about this list in the first place, is the Redeye Tetra. A bit like the Stirb before, Redeyes on paper don't sound all that large, only growing to about 2.5 inches in length, but they are again a very solid, chunky fish that has a presence despite their small size. And that chunkiness, along with that beautiful red eye, really allows them to stand out from the crowd. But despite their presence though, they are very gentle and not prone at all to chasing other fish or bullying in any way, though you will want to keep them in a school with at least 6 individuals, as they are very dedicated shoalers and like to be with each other pretty much all of the time. Despite this though, they are a very calm species. They may like to be with each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're always racing around the tank. And Redeye Tetras are supremely placid. They will spend a great deal of their time just sort of schooling about in one place, waiting to see if any food is going to pass them by, and then the rest of the time they'll be off exploring around the tank, trying to actively hunt that food down. Unlike the last group of fish, and it is a group for the end of this list, that is pretty much all of the zebra danio and danio related bunch. They are all such hardy fish, they are so classic, it would be impossible to leave them off a list like this. But effectively, zebra danios, leopard danios, pearl danios, glow light danios, all of the similar ones are all supremely hardy, including the giant danios as well. They're all able to live in cooler waters down to about 15 degrees, and they can tolerate huge swings in water parameters, such as heaters breaking down or sudden spikes in ammonia due to dead fish or anything like that. They are incredibly hardy species. I would go as far as to call them perfect beginner or new tank fish, just because they can withstand all of those mistakes and still be able to thrive in the tank. Much like a lot of the others, they do need to be kept in a group, so you'll want to pick one species and then get 6 of those individuals. Don't try, for example, to keep one leopard, one zebra, one pearl, one glow light or anything like that. They do need to be with their own kind, but once you've got them established in a group, you will find that they are long-lived. They can easily live for 5 years plus for such small fish, and they're also, as I say, incredibly hardy, quite possibly the hardiest of them all. But there are lots of fish to consider for the budding aquarist, too many certainly to list in one list. And a lot of them also make perfect community fish too, so you can mix and match them together so long as you've got the tank space for them. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video, all about 10 hardy species for you to consider for your tank. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!